Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka. It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
The first thing I want to say on this first episode of our brand new podcast is thank you for everyone who has pushed play. Whether you're someone looking for the content that we're putting out, someone who's looking to help us with growing to a better podcast, or just friends and family supporting us, I speak for all the hosts when I say thank you. And with that said, what the hell did you just press play on? This is Baka. It is an anime podcast that is done in a book club style. Every 2 weeks, we're going to watch an anime, share it with the audience, and then come together for this podcast and talk about it. We're going to share our thoughts, our feelings, our crazy fan theories. We're going to go over plot, characters, themes, and yeah, that's basically it. We really want to create a show about discussing these anime, digging into them, and include our audience in that. So we want feedback from you. We want to hear your theories. How are we wrong? And more importantly, how was I right? So, with that said, that's not what this episode is. Everything I just told you was a lie for what you just pressed play on. We are going to do a self-interview today. We're going to ask ourselves a bunch of questions and get to know each other through the anime that we enjoy. What are our favorites? Where do we come from anime? And we also want to hear this from you. So at the end of the show, we're going to share our email and our Twitter accounts and also what anime we're going to be watching over the next 2 weeks. So stay tuned for that, and then you can jump in and join in the discussion. I can't do this show alone because I'm not that smart. And so I brought two co-hosts who have much better things to say than I do. I'll go ahead and introduce them. The Daffy to my duck, Jeremy. How you doing, Jeremy?
Good evening.
And the Porky to my pig, Jason. How's it going, Jason?
I'm a little insulted, but pretty good.
Look, the Yosemite to my Sam didn't really quite work, and I ran out of Looney Tunes characters I could think off the top of my head.
Fair enough.
Okay. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. You guys have already seen these questions, so I'm not catching you off guard, and you're all ready to go?
All set.
Who wants to go first?
I motion for Jason.
I don't mind going first.
Motion accepted. So, Jason, our first question is, how did you first start watching anime, and what was your first anime?
I'd actually like to start the question off with what was my first one, because I kind of fell into it at first. At a very young age, I think it was somewhere between 11 and 13, I was at a friend's house, and Dragon Ball Z was just kind of on in the background, and it was really slow and a little boring at the time.
Wait,
because
Dragon Ball Z is slow?
Right. So about 3 or 4 episodes went on, and I went, this is what's going to happen to him? You know, well, why is he powering up? Where did these aliens come from? And I was hooked. It was great. Problem is that at that age, and also at that time, anime just wasn't something that you could get a hold of, get a lot of. So it was a lot of years until I got into anime. And that wasn't until I stumbled upon Yu-Gi-Oh! On YouTube.
That's great.
And so this was about 4 or 5 years ago. And it actually wasn't the Yu-Gi-Oh! Show, it was the abridged series. And I could not stop laughing. I looked forward to every single episode. But I noticed that there was a pretty decent storyline behind it. So I looked it up on Netflix. It was there, and I actually really enjoyed it. It's a really fun, kid-friendly, actually some of it's not kid-friendly, anime. And that's kind of how I first started into it.
Awesome. Yeah, nothing better than that Yu-Gi-Oh! Theme song than the English version.
Right?
So good. When I first asked you to help with the show, I kind of considered you the guy who doesn't watch a lot of anime, and he'll be the outside opinion. And then as we were getting ready for the show, you're dropping all these animes you've watched, and I'm like, well, I've totally whiffed on that one, but your analysis is a lot better than mine, so I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Jeremy, how about you? How did you first start watching anime, and what was your first?
Well, for me, it was actually fairly similar. I think it was around the same time. There was a lot of Cartoon Network stuff going on, Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon. There was also Yu Yu Hakusho, which was really interesting to me. Yeah, Spirit Detective, I think it was. It was really, really interesting. But what really got my attention was the late night sci-fi animes. Those were really, really cool. This completely expanded my view of what a cartoon could be. And specifically, there was Fatal Fury, which that one was just funny. But then there was Armitage the Third, there was Iria, the Zerum animation, and there were a few others that I can't even remember what they were. I just know if I saw them, I'd recognize them. But yeah, I remember sitting late watching those, sometimes recording them, so I'd have them on VHS. Yes, VHS back then. And I would play them over and over again just to see what I could get out of the different animes. So,
you used to make your friends watch them?
Yes, I did. And made them better for it.
Okay. For me, it started with a book series. I used to read a lot as a kid, and I loved book series that kept going and going, so I was always looking for new ones. And I found in my school library, on the cover, there was a robot and a jet at the same time, which is all I needed to know I wanted to read it. And it was Robotech, the book series. And I read all three storylines, the Zentradi, the Masters, the Invasion. And it wasn't until a year or two later that I'm watching Toonami comes on the TV, and there's all these characters I read about going about their adventures in Robotech. And it wasn't until later I learned that it's actually a merging of three different animes, and Macross being the starter. And after that came on Sailor Moon. Nothing wrong with that for a young teenage boy watching.
Oh, of course not.
And then Dragon Ball Z, and I started watching these shows over and over again, showing up every day to catch up on the storyline. No matter how many times Dragon Ball Z would reset back to the beginning of the story without finishing the Frieza saga, I still showed up and watched it. So yeah, Robotech is my gateway anime. I almost said drug, and then thought that might not want to go down that road. Not the
light we wanted in, yeah.
Jeremy, you actually came up with this next question, and I feel it has a really good synergy with what we were going to follow it up with. So I'll let you go first. What is the most important thing in anime to you?
For me, I would say the most important thing is having a really interesting, highly detailed, complex setting, and characters that are well thought out, that have some depth to them that you can continue messing with before or after the actual story has completed. So that's the big thing for me, is if you get a really nice setting, you can just keep going with the story. And my imagination tends to do that. So that's it.
Yeah, that would explain why you like some of the anime you do, for sure.
Yes. You'll find out in my top list. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the reason I wanted you on the show, is because you do have kind of a unique perspective on the anime. You almost came from a different route than most people. Well, you still have the Toonami with those old anime movies warped you in ways we have only begun to understand. So, Jason, how about you? What's the most important thing in anime for you?
For me is actually, I hold it to very similar standards to just about any other media I watch. Number one is I want to care about the characters. If I'm not engaged with who is telling the story, or what things are happening to that person, then I get bored. Is the best way to put it. But the other thing is, like, this is the one thing that really, really irritates me, is if it doesn't have a good ending. Like,
oh, really?
So if you've got a series that just like DBZ just doesn't have an end, and it never will, that's fine with me. And if that's what the expectation is, then I'm okay with that. But if I get to the end of a series and it just gives a la explanation or a choose your own adventure explanation, I get really frustrated at the writers because I feel like they just kind of gave up. So those are my criteria for an anime that I will probably rate well.
Yeah, that's fair. So for me, the thing I find special about anime is the amount of creativity and imagination that can go into it. They can tell stories that other mediums might not be able to portray as well. They can add twists that no one else saw coming. You'll see a lot of that in my top 5 anime that we're going to get into here in a minute. And I need to see that uniqueness. And it's even gotten to a point where I've watched so much anime, it's like, oh, giant robots. Okay. Where's the twist? Everyone's done that. Show me something new. For example, oh look, it's a battle school where people challenge each other and have tournaments, and I'm like, oh, that's been done. Well, it's a food school. Okay, that's new. That's interesting. So shows like Food Wars capture my interest because they put that twist on it. And I love to be surprised and shocked and not see coming what's coming my way. And I feel like anime can do that better than almost any other medium. Guys, did you like my answer or what?
No,
that was great.
I
totally agree with it.
The lack of applause hurts, but I'll forgive. So the reason that we went with that question is the next one is what are our top 5 animes? And we're going to this is where we're going to dig in a little bit. We're going to talk about these animes a little bit more than just sharing some answers, because these are really where our tastes lie the most. And so if you're coming back to this show to hear our opinions on animes, this might be a good how much credit do I give these guys based on these lists, right? Jason, why don't you go first?
Sure.
Because me and Jeremy actually shared a couple, but your list was pretty unique.
Oh, thank you. So my first, I guess my 5th favorite is Trinity Blood. That was one of the first ones that really grabbed my attention as far as unique storytelling. And like Troy just said, being able to tell a story and show a particular story that you wouldn't necessarily be able to on television.
I want to ask you a question about your number 5. Which one is that?
Post-apocalyptic space vampires.
Does it start on a Zeppelin? Is that the one that starts on a Zeppelin?
It's been a long time since I've seen it, but it's the priest that is he's really a vampire hunter, but he is kind of in disguise as a priest, but he can use his blood to form weapons.
Okay, yeah, so I have seen this one. I'm pretty sure it aired on Adult Swim at some point, and while I did enjoy it, I felt a lot like it was a Trigun clone. That's
fair.
That's probably the stories are obviously nothing like it, but mostly the main characters. They have that I'm silly, I'm flippant, but I'm actually the best in the world.
So specifically, what caught me with it is I love stories with moral conflict, and and a lot of people will say, oh, like Superman is one of the most boring characters in the world. Well, from a hero aspect, absolutely. What can you do to him? But that's not his story. His story is about, does he make the right decision? And spinning stories in that particular area is cool to me. So like when you get near the end of Trinity Blood and you find out, what his real backstory is, and that once he comes to that decision making of, is he going to, save humanity, or is he going to save, his kind, if you will, and he has that moral conflict. That's what really hooked me. And yeah, the silly, flippy, I'm the hero kind of thing is up my alley.
I'm gonna forgive you because what you said about Superman. Superman's my favorite superhero for the exact thing you just said, and it's like nobody else gets it. If you were here in person right now, I'd be hugging you. I actually messed up a little bit here at the beginning. We're going to go 555 444. So my 5 is actually Jeremy's number 4, so we can go ahead and skip me. But Jeremy, why don't you tell us your number 5?
Okay, my number 5 is Blue Gender, and this was one that I'm pretty sure I saw as an OVA series on Late Night Sci-Fi. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's where I first saw it.
I think I saw it on Adult Swim myself as a full episodic show.
Yeah, I really liked this one because it did a good job, I thought, of presenting you with the sense of the characters being confronted with something that they couldn't. When you watched regular characters that were just kind of side characters dealing with the threat, the giant insects that were attacking, it was like they were coming up against a force of nature, a wall. They were terrified. And you don't always get this when you're watching military or mecha anime. A lot of times you have the confidence. You know, these characters are confident that they're going to succeed, they're going to make it, they're going to be fine. These guys were terrified. They knew that if they went up against the blue, these giant insect creatures, they're probably not coming back. They're going to die. And so there was a combat fatigue that was present in a lot of the protagonists, the lead characters. And for me, that was palpable. That was really interesting to observe. They would do things, say things, act in ways that ordinarily I don't think they would, given the kind of character that they were described as. And this extended even further into an entire second Earth satellite space station. And in there, the people were all experiencing this. And it felt like it fit into the drama category really well. I was able to empathize with the characters, see things from their perspective. It was cool to see Starship Troopers. Yeah, that's what it is, Starship Troopers. But at the same time, have it seem more serious and just totally dump the comedy. There's almost no comedy in it. And its art wasn't fantastic, but I liked it for all of those reasons.
Yeah, I don't know if it's getting anywhere near my top of the list, but I do remember enjoying it. Is that one you've ever seen, Jason?
No.
I thought it was all right. Let's go on to number 4s, and I'm gonna go first since I haven't got to do one. My number 4 was Gurren Lagann, and you know, Kill La Kill could maybe take this spot, but Gurren Lagann takes it for me because of the second half of the show. The first half I find pretty standard, over humorous. In the second half of the show, the adrenaline starts kicking in and the intensity, and you get so fired up in that show that you're throwing your hands in the air. And a little bit of spoilers here for the final battle. Galaxies are being thrown through space at giant robots. And it's ridiculous and stupid, but at that point, it's melted your brain and you don't care. You're just screaming in exhilaration. You can't help it. And that's a show that took me by surprise because I was like, oh, this is robots fighting robots. So every episode they'll fight a robot and they'll get a little better. And that second part of that show throws a couple twists into the works that you didn't see coming, and it's amazing. And I still, to this day, go back and rewatch the final episode for that final battle just to feel that well of emotion of extreme amplitude. Like, yeah! I love it.
See, now, I've watched the beginning of it on your recommendation, but I have not been able to get to that point yet where I've started to see it head towards something that is going to make it up on the list in my book. That's interesting. Yeah. I'm going to have to give it the shot to get to the rest of it because it sounds like that's where I need to go to really
it's tough because when you recommend it, you can't drop too many hints about that second half because you want that to be a surprise because it does kind of take you by surprise.
That makes sense.
Jason, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is Attack on Titan, and it hit me by surprise. I heard about it at work. Someone said, "Oh, you got to watch it," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And oversized humans are terrifying.
Especially when they're disproportionate.
Right. But, I think someone thought, oh, what is the scariest monster? Well, people are the scariest monster. Well, let's make huge people. But the storytelling's great. The character development is great. in
Unambiguity?
yes, of the Titans
Teamwork.
themselves. You know, how they're kind of not wrapped in mystery, but they are a vast unknown with little bits of information you get here and there. And then, spoiler, if for the first season, when the main character finds out he's half Titan, that's just kind of mind blowing, right? Because you kind of see something is going on with him, and you kind of guess a little bit as the episodes go on. But when he like does that first, like, I'm gonna block a cannonball, that was brilliantly written, brilliantly drawn. Great anime, and I'm looking forward to more seasons.
The scene for me that steals that show is that first engagement that the new soldiers have with the Titans, and the main character's flying along, and a Titan gets in his way, and that scene happens. I won't spoil it, but
Yes.
my jaw dropped open at that scene, and that's really a testament to a good anime.
Yeah, I agree completely.
So, Jeremy, you stole my number 5 with your number 4, so why don't you go ahead and hit us with it?
All right, I really enjoyed Fate Zero. And now I know that the Fate series has gotten a little bit of guff, but Fate Zero is pretty much unanimously held as the best of the series. And I've got to say, this was my introduction to the Fate series, and from it, I have watched Unlimited or Blade Works. Oh crap, what's it called?
Unlimited Blade Works.
Unlimited Blade Works, thank you. I've watched that, I really enjoyed it, but didn't compare. Didn't compare to Zero. Haven't watched Stay Night yet. This, to me, was absolutely fascinating. I love the concept of having this modern day setting where you have all these houses that are still using magic, and they have different styles of magic. That was really interesting to me because you would have all of them being on a relatively level playing field. So you didn't know what was going to be confronting what, whether it be someone using a crystal focus or whether someone was going to be using, some kind of weird bug, maggot, parasite thing that's in their bloodstream. Or you'd even have people using guns or martial arts, weapons, and then you've got the heroes of legend. I mean, all these different things tackling into the battlefield are all different variables coming from different directions, and that just fascinated me. I thought, man, you could do so much with this. On top of that, go ahead.
No, go ahead, keep going.
Okay. On top of that, there was this really strong and ever-present sense of the characters really being in danger. Every one of them, you didn't know which one was going to be taken out in the next battle. I mean, you have your protagonist, and you're thinking he's definitely going to make it. He's definitely going to make it. But there's a lot of times where you're just going, I genuinely don't know what's going to happen here. What about these other mage characters, these other heroes? So I really love that in an anime when you are presented with characters that you start to care about them very quickly. You start to care about what's going to happen to them. You don't want to see them die. You don't want to see anything bad happen to them. But you don't know.
So when I hadn't seen Fate Stay Night when I watched Fate Zero as well. So and when I read the description and when it's setting up the first episode, I assumed I knew what was going to happen. I'm like, I'll check this out. Oh, they're magic users and they summon a hero, so there's going to be a lot of battles, and I'm sure there will be a plucky hero who doesn't belong in this, and he will find out he's special and be able to conquer through. Which is kind of what the original Fate Stay Night is, even though it does it well, but Fate Zero is not that. And the second you think that, it slaps you in the face and it says, no, this is. And it shows the hardness of these battles, right? That they have repercussions. Yes. That you can't just fight and for blood and not have deep repercussions throughout characters' lives. So yeah, this one definitely took me by surprise. I don't have the writer's name on me. The writer of this also created Madoka Magica and Psychopaths, two ones I really wanted to put on my list as well. Yeah. But Fate Zero was the first one that caught me off guard, and the one that caught me the most off guard.
It's one of the few animes where I've actually seen two characters fighting to the death, more or less, and I don't know which of them I want to win. I want them both to win. I want them both to walk away, but that just can't happen.
right?
My number 3 was Blood Plus, and actually for kind of a lot of the reasons you guys just talked about, caring about the characters, being invested in the story. Sure, there's a couple plot holes I've thought about over the years, but it's one that I love to come back to watch because it's fun, it's exciting. The first time through, you don't quite know what's going to happen, and they throw some nice twists in there. And like I said in the beginning, it had one of those endings that just fit well, even though you were like, no, I want it to go on, please give me more. But yeah, it was, I found that one just amazing. It's one of my favorite.
Can you describe Blood Plus a little bit? Because I don't remember, but I think I've seen it.
Sure.
Can you tell me like the main characters?
Yeah. So in the beginning, the main character, she wakes up and she's not quite sure about her surroundings, who she is, what she's doing. She's a vampire that hates other vampires, and these other vampires are immortal. And the only way they can be killed is by her blood entering their bloodstream. And so she has this special sword that she literally has to cut herself on every time she goes to fight. And then she gets this trail of blood that goes over her sword. And then anything that she hits, and any vampire that she hits with that sword, is, just
dead,
crumbles. So
awesome.
And of course they have the whole underling vampires and then like ancient vampires, but it doesn't fall into like that normal storyline of Transylvania American type vampires. Like it's got its own rich history, and that's cool. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I really, really loved it.
The relationships between Saya, who's the main character, and both her adoptive brother, the family she was adopted into, and her servant, bodyguard, protector, this guy who arises every time she arises because she goes through sleep incubation periods. The relationships that she has with both of them and how complicated they are, and also the way her character changes throughout that story is really good. They did too many animes, they have a character and he stays static the whole way through. Blood Plus, and the story's been done in a couple different iterations. Blood Plus is my favorite. I love the Saya of Blood Plus.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely check that out. I think I've seen one of the iterations because some of it sounds familiar, but I'm not recognizing any of the characters you guys are describing.
So what's your number 3 then?
My number 3 is Gansa. This was a crazy anime that I never would have picked up. I never would have watched because I'm not a fan of gore, and this would not have been up my alley. But I was in the local anime store where my wife and I lived at the time, and we were checking out different ones, and one of the ladies that worked there came up and said, hey, you really need to check this out. I've seen what you guys have gotten before. You're going to love this. Give it a shot. And so we got the first couple of volumes and we went home and we started watching it, and I'm going, okay, now if this gets really bad, we'll just flip it off and forget we watched it. It's so gory. But after the first episode, it really took off. I mean, even by the end of the first episode, it took off in the sense that it had us both hooked. We wanted to know what in the world is going on and where is this story going. This is crazy. This is insane. But I'm connecting with the characters. I'm seeing the perspectives. One of the things that it does really, really well, I think, is it presents the creator of that anime's perspective on humanity and how humanity sees itself and sees other people, individually. So you'll have a situation like at the beginning of the episode, or at some point in episode 1, where they're in a subway station and you get to hear the thoughts of all the people in the subway station as they witness something really terrible. They witness someone dying. And their thoughts are just really, really cynical and self-centered. And I did not personally feel that was an accurate expression of humanity in the real world, but I thought it was a really interesting expression of what the rest of this anime is going to be like. If these are the people that make up this world, this is everyday Joe waiting for the subway car. So The premise of it, for those that don't know, very, very briefly, it is a story about if you get a second chance at life after you've died, and you wake up in this room, and along with you and a handful of other people that have also died and been resurrected, there is this big black sphere called Ganse. And it presents you with this fact that you are now you're going to be going on missions, you're going to be hunting aliens, and it gives you technology. By technology, I mean it gives you a handful of pieces of equipment. You have a special suit that you can put on if you want, and you have a bunch of different guns and stuff, but it doesn't tell you anything about it. It doesn't tell you how they're used. It doesn't tell you need to use any of them. It's like picking up a game without any kind of tutorial, and you've got no documentation for it. So you're kind of screwed because you have one life in this game. And the kinds of people that were resurrected in this room range from like a grandma and her grandchild who she coddles endlessly to a group of gang members, like a motorcycle gang, I think it is. Later you have like a karate instructor, a model, a teacher, and countless others, as well as like a couple of protagonist high school students and whatnot. So seeing all these different characters react to this crazy situation in their own unique ways. Are they going to try to organize the group for survival? Are they going to break off and have just a small faction because they think that they have a better chance of surviving? Leave the others? Are they going to go lone wolf? What is Gantz? What's it trying to do? Is it really telling you the truth? And I watched this and I didn't know anything about the manga. So I have to admit that when I started looking into this just to refresh my memory a little bit, I looked at some of the characters and I saw that in the manga, it answered some of the questions that I had about the world that really intrigued me and anchored it into my third point on this list. Was kind of based a little bit in this anime being a separate entity from the manga. And so I was able to come to my own conclusions about what was going on in this world, and I was actually more satisfied with my conclusions than what I discovered later in the manga. So that's not to say that it's bad conclusions in the manga. I think they're fascinating, but I do like the conclusions that I came up to because it presents the very thing that Jason mentioned he absolutely hates, which is I don't have an answer, and that's so cool because there's like all these possibilities and I'm juggling and it's awesome. But but yeah, so that's Gantz in a nutshell for me.
Yeah, that is one I actually haven't seen.
Yeah. Don't watch it with kids.
yeah, definitely.
It's rough.
How old is that one now? Do you know when that came out around?
I can look it up, but I did not note that down. I don't remember.
Okay. So I'll just do my number 3. It is Death Note, because this was the first anime for me that wasn't about battles in some way that I really enjoyed. Even Sailor Moon, it's still an episode there's a battle.
Yes.
Death Note is something special story-wise, and it really opened my eyes to what the anime medium could do, and that it didn't have to fit into certain tropes, right? Because that's what we got here in America so much. We're these tropes. This must be why you like it. You like these battles. You like these robots. You like these dudes powering up. Here's that. And then Death Note comes along, and it's Sherlock Holmes versus Moriarty from the point of view of Moriarty with a supernatural twist just to make it harder for everybody. It's a story about a boy who finds a notebook on the ground, and anytime he writes a name in it, somebody dies. And he decides, well, I'm just going to rid the world of all evil and become God. And the super intelligent detective, who is just as smart as our killer, trying to catch him, and the cat and mouse game they play, the chess-like moves they do. So there is not one single battle in this entire anime, and it's more compelling than almost any anime before it that is about battles.
Cool, that's another one that I have not seen. I need to watch it. I know it's really high in everybody's estimation. That's cool.
So good. And so many moral questions you can ask yourself while you're watching it. At what point does a person who's trying to rid the world of evil go from the good guy to the bad guy? And they flirt with that line the whole show through. So I think for me that is one of the top animes of all time. And if you think anime is just robots and big boob girls and dude's powering up,
Yeah.
watch Death Note, and your eyes will be opened. Okay, on to number 2, which for me was stolen.
Sorry. It's a good anime.
So, Jason, what's your number 2?
Elfenlied is one that I've watched probably 8 or 10 times, and
Really?
I would still probably watch it again.
Wow.
And one of the reasons I like it so much is it's not so much because it's got kind of a Mewtwo feel almost to it. It's not just a story. It's because it could definitely be horror, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just a horror flick. It's not just a supernatural monster flick. It's a movie about forgiveness and redemption, and it forces not just the main character, but it forces you as a viewer to make a moral decision or have a moral quandary within yourself about events that happen in the movie. And I love that it's a movie. I think it would have been a mistake to try and make it a series. But just that moral conflict of, would I have made the same choice as the main character did? Would I have been so willing to explore what it's like to be basically this monster? And would I be able to reach out with a friendly hand?
Mm-hmm.
And I think at that kind of storytelling is rare and special.
Yeah, the twist that is the connection between the two characters on that. I can definitely see where you're coming from with that. Absolutely. Jeremy, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is also could be categorized as a movie. It basically is Armitage III. And when I saw this, it was definitely on Sci-Fi late night. And this one, it's kind of a situation between the chicken and the egg, right? Because I'm a sucker for whenever AIs gain consciousness and then they face the questions of, am I really life? And how should people view me? How should I view others? And the more power that they have, the more that it's interesting to me to see what their decision is going to be. And so with this show, it kind of deals with that to a degree in the concept of whether or not a robot could ever be considered alive, even if it meets whatever the current understanding of the definition for alive is in science, which in our real world is ever changing. So in the world that's presented, you have a Mars colony and you have Earth. And it's far enough in the future that they've developed these really advanced robots. And it's actually more of a detective story or a cop show about Ross and Armitage, 2 cops that are dealing with a murder. And as the story progresses, they discover more and more secret things about what's really going on. And it presents that whole issue to you so that you have to watch them go through it. It also has very strong romance in it. I watched that with Tanya.
Does.
Yeah, it does. I watched that with Tanya, with my wife, and that was something she said is that she thought that this was one of the most honorably handled romances that she'd seen, where the characters seemed like they cared more about, especially Ross, cared more about the person on the inside than he did about anything else. And so it was really a pleasure to watch that anime, and it made a big impression. It came out the same year as Ghost in the Shell, and I did not actually see Ghost in the Shell for several years after. Otherwise, it might have beat this one. I don't know.
For my first thought when you said that was, how can this be on a list when Ghost in the Shell isn't? But
Yep.
They are different enough. And for me, this Armitage is just nah. It's somewhere in the middle. But I did appreciate the cop story, the detective work that they do, that angle to the story. I did enjoy that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, again, my number 2 was stolen. I got screwed in these questions, guys. What's going on? Okay, so our number 1s. Jeremy, why don't you go ahead and go go again.
Sure. So number 1 for me was Trigun, and this kind of departs from the norm of what you've seen in the rest of the anime that I have on my top list. At least it does for the first half of the series. Once you get into the second half of the series, though, I think Trigun really hits back hard with a lot of philosophical questions. And in reality, I guess you could pare it down to 2 philosophical questions of naivety. And I don't want to give away what they are, per se. I mean, you can if you want to. But I think that Vash the Stampede's naivety is the central plot of this entire series. And whether or not his worldview can be defended if it's pressed hard enough, if he'll break, if he'll change his worldview. And to me, that was really fascinating. It had great character development. There were, Wolfwood is a character I'll always remember. He was a great character. And Vash. I mean, the couple of the fights, I actually watched a couple of scenes just to refresh my memory. And I mean, I'm just sitting here, and the way they handled the art, it's so great. There's a fight between, I'll just name the characters, I won't say their relationship, so it doesn't really count as a spoiler. Vash and Knives. No, it's not a spoiler. And if you watch Knives' eyes during the fight, when he sees Vash respond, his eyes, they actually drew it where his eyes relax. And he's so happy to see this other character behaving in a way that's I don't want to make it a spoiler.
You are towing a spoiler line.
This is so bad. I'm just going to stop there. But I love the art. They handle the details. They do a great job of character expression, even in the art. It's great.
You know, the story is what it is. And I don't always think it's great. I think like the first half of the story kind of just meanders around. The second half of the story becomes a very almost typical battle anime. But the reason it was so high on my list, this is my number 2, is because for my money, Vash the Stampede is the greatest anime character of all time. Come at me, internet. I'm saying it. I'm dropping the gauntlet. For those watching the video, look at the icon. Vash the Stampede is my boy. Like you said, this is an anime about his worldview. And everything is against it. The population of the world is against it. The world itself is against it. His enemies are against it. His own body is against his worldview. And he has to fight to keep it, which is an ironic phrase. But he's so deeply complex because of that. He has, and like the vampire priest from Trinity Blood, you know, the way he plays it off is he's actually a very deeply solemn, emotional character who hides it behind flippancy and humor and silliness. And I loved it. Johnny Young Bosch in the English dub, it is my favorite of all his voice work, of everything he's done, and I always love hearing him in an anime in an English dub. He nails Vash the Stampede. I love his voice in that series. And you know, all the other characters are great. Wolfwood, Millie, Meryl. But Vash the Stampede, I think, is underrated as an anime character. I think he should be the top of every list.
Except yours.
Well, no, because this is a list for animes, not for characters. Like I said, the anime story itself, I don't think is the strongest. And that kept it from the top. But I do think he's the best character.
Cool.
Jason, have you ever seen Trigun?
I got through the first 3 episodes, and then something else took over my attention, and I never got back to it, so I need to finish it.
Boom.
Get past the whole country part of it. There's something better than just the country.
Nice.
The Western aspect was hard for me to stomach at first, because I'm not a Western fan.
Okay, so it's not like Fist of the North Star is what you're telling me?
I don't think so, no. I remember Fist of the North Star, and no, I would not compare them.
Troy's down there looking like, how dare you?
Fight me, sir.
I grew up with, like, support your local sheriff and an entire beta library that my parents had. Library of Western flicks, and it's just not my thing anymore. Yeah.
I thought it was a unique world for an anime.
That's the thing, is that it did a good job of breaking me out of that, where I would actually watch it and go, yeah, this is good. Mm-hmm. This is good, and it's steampunk enough.
Let's get to Jason's number 1, because he needs to really sell this to me.
So this is half nostalgia, and half it's the one almost soap opera anime, and that's Dragon Ball Z.
It's the professional wrestling of anime.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think at its heart, it's not just a story about a dude getting stronger and stronger and stronger, because obviously it's not ever going to reach an end. But it's more for me about a story about tenacity and never giving up. And specifically, I enjoyed the Buu saga, because I think that over a lot of the different seasons that I saw, because I don't think I'm up to snuff with the newest season, Super Saiyan God 2 or whatever. Anyways, it's gotten a little ridiculous. But specifically, the Buu saga gave a more depth and decision making to the characters that I'm not sure they were able to shine as well. Maybe back in the Cell saga they had as much depth, but specifically the Buu saga forced them into some decision makings that were really stand out as far as storytelling. And one good example is how you have Vegeta, who, he's joined them as defenders of Earth. He's trying to always beat Goku, and in his fueled pride, he makes a bad decision and joins with the bad guys just for that little ounce, that little bit of strength he might have to finally beat Goku. Because that Saiyan pride of him being the Prince of Saiyans, it just fuels his anger, fuels his pride, and it makes him trip up, makes him make a decision that he may not have made if he wasn't so. Because the world is nearly ending. Of course, that happens just about every season.
Yeah.
But in this face of important stakes, he decides that I'm going to go do this thing for my own personal vendetta. And so it's a lot of those back and forth pulls that really hooked me as far as that particular season. But as a series, I will always love watching the next one because it is very soap opera-ish in that you love the characters, you love seeing what's going to happen next, and like the newest movie. I know it got a lot of hate, but I loved it. I thought it was great.
Which one was that?
The one with the God of Destruction. Whatever his face is, that where he first turns Super Saiyan God, which is completely like disconjoined with the rest of the series. Like that whole movie just has no place in the storyline. But I loved that movie. It was great.
None of the Dragon Ball Z movies have any place in the storyline, which is something that really frustrates me about anime movies like that. Because I need my continuity, and I watch these movies, I'm like, but where would it go? It doesn't fit. He has this ability, but he doesn't have this ability. He was in a hospital that whole time.
Yep.
Yeah. I can understand the nostalgia pick, and Dragon Ball Z for me will always have a special place in my heart. When they announced Dragon Ball Super, I got excited like everybody else. I used to watch it. Like I said, I watched it over and over when it would go to the Ginyu Force saga and stop and go back to Raditz. Yep. You know what? I'm sticking with you because someday we're going to find Frieza. And then we found Frieza, and we found Frieza for a very long time.
Yes.
In fact, we kept tripping over him.
My problem with Dragon Ball Z is the problem, and we'll talk about more in the genres, is I actually didn't finish the Buu saga because it hit that point of saturation where I'm like, I can't keep going. I need an ending, you guys. Please end the story.
Never gonna happen.
And so I have actually never finished the Buu saga. I know exactly. I watched up to like where you're talking about, and then that is where I fell off and I went too far ahead, and I'm like, I can't catch up now. And I am enjoying the Bridge series on YouTube by Team 4 Star.
I was going to mention that too.
They're amazing. Every episode is perfection, and it rekindled my love for Dragon Ball Z, and I'm actually very thankful to them for that. My number one is Full Metal Alchemist, and I am cheating a little bit and including Brotherhood in that. Because, and I think I've said to you guys before, in my opinion, the first half of Full Metal Alchemist and the second half of Brotherhood combine to make the perfect anime. This is an anime where there are great action scenes, but it's not a battle anime. The story doesn't progress just to see character A fight character B. That is not the goal of it. There is some really dark twist in this story, and yet there's some really great humor. There's also some kind of bad humor. It's not a perfect anime at all. It's epic. It's well thought out how the powers work of this world, right? It's based on a science that looks like magic to us, but there is a limit to it that everybody has to match. And I really want to be careful with spoilers here. There is a main character death in this series. And I'm saying this for everyone to hear. I'm not ashamed. I've seen, between these two series, I've watched the storyline probably 4 or 5 times. I've cried at that scene every time. And if I even think about it now, I will get emotional about it. And there's no other anime that has that. I get sad for anime. I've seen emotional ones. I love having my emotions touched by anime. Nothing's ever reached me that intensely, that intimately, where I move to tears, even when I know it's coming. That's how good their character building is. That's how good their world building is. And like I said, there's so much going for this series. There's a reason it tops a lot of lists. And now everyone, whoever hears this, knows I'm a big crybaby. So that's our top 5 list. That's everything, right? We got everyone?
Yep.
As you can see, we have a lot of differences, a lot of variances, even animes that some have seen that some haven't. And that's one of the reasons we're doing this podcast is let's together pick an anime, watch it together, and then have these reviews like we just did, but together. And that's what we're hoping to include everybody in. So let's go on to our last couple questions. Your favorite anime genre and your least favorite anime genre.
All right, so my favorite is definitely leaning towards the horror factor, and not gore specifically. Just I want to have a monster that kind of not only terrifies the entire cast, but also like gives me the creepy jeebies, right? Because I think most animes that do a good job with their horror really distinguishes themselves as a way to tell a story that you wouldn't be able to on like television. My least favorite is like romance and not
strongly disagree.
Yeah, and there's some that I like, but when it's like the cheesy kind of funsy romances, it's just not for me.
Okay, you're not invited to my anime viewing parties where we cry over the loves.
Oh man.
I've revealed way too much here. How about you, Jeremy? What are your favorite and least favorite?
Well, actually, I think it kind of comes pretty similar. I would say that it falls into the category of drama, psychological drama a lot. Like Psycho-Pass was good, but for me, it's funny because the anime themselves may not fall into that genre, but as long as they have enough of this present, I'm happy with that anime. I also like to have tragedy in the anime because I find that is really gripping. I can grab a hold of that and I understand what's going on between the characters. Usually sci-fi, fantasy is pretty cool, but I find that I almost always fall on the side of sci-fi. And I do like a little bit of romance in my anime, but it's got to be drama romance. It's like for Armitage, there's a couple of scenes in Armitage where, I've seen that movie, 4 or 5 times and still It's same reaction. I actually a single tear. So
one tear, man up.
Just one. I'm like the crying wooden Indian.
Oh, that's a reference. Kids, Google that.
Yeah.
You know, I probably should have thought about these questions a little bit more. You know, I can tell you my least favorite is, and I believe this shonen, Dragon Ball Z. That now is a bitter spot in watching anime for the reason I said with Dragon Ball Z. It reaches a point of saturation where I know I can't go on, and I want to. And you know, Naruto is one actually that almost made my list, and I love Naruto. The fights are unique, but the filler and the battles go a couple episodes, and pretty soon I'm falling behind, and I want to know what these endings are, and it's because I like them so much at first, it's so painful to let them go and know I'm never going to the end with you. So I almost exclusively have a rule of, you know, you have 24, 25 episodes to tell me a story or get out. When I watch anime now, because I don't want to be hurt again. As far as I guess my favorite genre, things like Gurren Lagann and Kill La Kill give me that over the top action that reaches into my heart and makes me want to jump around the room and start swinging swords and giant robots, and do it in a way that's unique and interesting, like those two did. But nothing gets me riled up more, right? That's the quickest. Like I said, I like my emotions messed with when I watch an anime, no matter what emotion it is. But the fastest way to do it is play a pumping battle song and let's go over the top every time. I do really like the horror genre as well. I actually would love to see more of it in anime. And like Jason said, not gore, but it's an underutilized thing, and it can be done so well that I definitely like to see that there. Dub or sub? Why, Jeremy?
Sub. Definitely sub as much as possible. There's exceptions to this, and that is if I was forced to watch it on dub because that's what it was available on, and now that's the characters. Like Dragon Ball Z is a really big dub one for me. But if I get a choice, I will take sub. And the main reason for this is because when I hear English actors trying to read the lines, I have a harder time believing the sincerity of their words. They don't seem quite as genuine to me as when I'm completely ignorant of the words being said and all I see is text on the screen, which I can read really fast and get right back to the details, and then I hear all the emotions of the characters, and so then I get to put the two things together, and for me that presents something that gives me a far more believable character. I can get really distracted by English dubbing that is not perfect.
When you watch a lot of those older animes too, and dubbing has definitely come a long way, but
yes.
That older stuff can leave a bad taste.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Jason, how about you?
I actually love both. One of the really great things about sub is if I'm in a place where I can't listen to the audio, there we go. I have a way to watch it. Dubbing really doesn't distract me much, because if the story is good enough, then I'm going to get involved with the character no matter what they sound like. And also I'm a fan of quite a few of the actors, which I looked them up once and now I don't know their names. But anyways, some of the voice actors in Japanese, but then also English voice actors and actresses I'm really fond of. So, but yeah, either or.
I'm a dub man, with the full understanding that I'm not getting the pure the pure method of watching it. Mostly, you know, that's what I grew up watching on Toonami and then Adult Swim. It was almost all dub. And now when I listen to sub, and this is just my opinion, but it feels like the Japanese culture are a bit more expressive with their emotions especially when they get emotional and expressive, that it can come off a little more extreme. Whereas in America, the English tends to be a little bit more subtle with the emotions, which is what I'm used to. And it also doesn't help that I like to pretend that I'm in every anime I watch and that I'm the hero. And so when they're speaking in Japanese, it's a little bit of breaking my my little fantasy there. So I don't mind sub. Once it starts going and the words and the emotions connect, and I hardly even notice that I'm reading anymore. But I'll always prefer the dub first if I have a chance to get it. And I have waited for a lot of animes for the dub. Attack on Titan, I waited for the dub as much as I wanted to see it early. So, okay, our last questions. Outside of anime, what other geek stuff do we do, guys? Jeremy?
Okay, I really enjoy playing tabletop RPGs when I can, but that doesn't happen very often. So more often than not, I theorize tabletop RPGs and board games and stuff. I remember that when I was really watching Dragon Ball Z, I was also trying to formulate all the numbers to come up with an awesome RPG system for their attacks, and the destruction disc or destructo disc or whatever, how does that get through? What's the armor piercing? It gets through anything.
Did I play that with you? Did we try that?
I think we did try it.
I feel like we did, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had Kamehameha stuff figured out. Oh, we were such nerds. It was great though. I also really enjoy on the computer role-playing games, and also roguelikes like Dwarf Fortress. Fantastic. Cataclysm, Dark Days Ahead. Great. And also geology and rock hounding. Very much into figuring out what's going on out there, finding cool rocks.
Very cool. Jason, how about you?
I'm a huge video game nerd. Fantasy is my biggest draw, whether it be sci-fi or medieval. I have dumped over 1,000 hours into Skyrim. And I probably dumped half as much.
For the audio listeners, I'm covering my face in shock.
We thought we knew the big games you played, but we had no idea.
So I've probably spent half as much as that modding Skyrim because of my immersion. I need to have my immersion.
You're one of those people.
Yes, which is one of the reasons I love some of the anime that I watch, because I can get immersed into it. So if I can play a video game that really pulls me and really immerses me, that's where I'm at. So I like ARPGs, I like MOBAs, but I really love fantasy RPGs, whether it be sci-fi or medieval. And as you can tell, a lot of Skyrim. So
I like a lot of the geek stuff, comic books, video games, you name it. I've usually tried it once. But I have a personality that gets a little obsessed with fantasy worlds, and there's nothing that's pulled me in more than Star Wars itself. I'm a huge Star Wars guy. Most of my shirts have Star Wars something on them. I have Star Wars figurines that line my desk. I love the fantasy worlds I can fall into. But Star Wars is my one first true love.
You are emotional.
You know this. So that's our questions. So Jason, you point out. Let's throw out our. And I've lost the words.
Honorable mentions.
Honorable mentions, which I mean, it's a pity pat. Like, yeah, you're cool too. Yeah, go ahead, hit us with some of your honorable mentions, and maybe drop why you didn't put them on the list. Maybe not go into what the animes were like we did with the list, but why they couldn't get there.
My first one is Bleach, and I think that's just because it's too similar to DBZ.
Also hurt me.
Another endless one. What pulled me in actually was the movies. So I actually watched the movies before I watched the series.
I do like the movies.
But I thought it was interesting storytelling, a neat, different way of telling that antagonist grows from peon to amazing, but he has some sort of hidden amazing power, right? And then my other one, which I love it just because it's fun and it has that fantasy feel to it, is Devil is a Part-Timer.
I love Devil as a Part-Timer. It's so funny.
Right.
Really good comedy anime, which you don't get a lot.
Yes, because it starts out like this serious fantasy, like, I'm gonna destroy the world, and then all of a sudden he's serving fast food. and my favorite character is his main sidekick lieutenant. Because he's so serious about making money from this fast food joint so he can climb the corporate ladder. It's so great. The reason it didn't make my list is because I was trying to give the audience a feel for what I lean towards. But I do love fun anime like this one. Like, if we were going to do a top 10 fun anime, this would definitely be in the top 3, because yeah, just a great one.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I got a handful. I'll just pick a few. Madoka Magica. Don't go for my usual huge lists. Madoka Magica. Now, for me, picking these anime was really, really difficult for the top 5, because the anime just feel like they all belong in tiers for me, and any one of them could be substituted for another one in that tier. So Madoka Magica belonged in the same tier as Blue Gender, Fate Zero, and Gantz. And so it was just kind of pulling them out of the hat that didn't put that on my list. 2 others that are, I think, awesome is One Punch Man. I love that series. That is an awesome series. Great, funny series. And Log Horizon, which I really enjoyed the first season of it. I haven't finished the second season. But have you guys either? Have you seen that, Log Horizon? Okay.
I'm a Sword Art Online fan.
Yeah, see, I think you could be a fan of both. I enjoy Sword Art Online.
First story arc, and then stop watching.
Yeah, I didn't continue after the first story arc in that. Yeah. But Log Horizon, it does a great job of like making the world feel more alive. That was really cool. And then I think Akira and Ghost in the Shell belong at least mentioned, because both of them were very big, influential animes. So, yeah, that's it for me.
When I made my list, the only one that I put just outside of it was Naruto. With all the bitching I've done, and yeah, it's still there. This is the one that hurt me the most, though, really. Naruto is like 200, 300 episodes, and then Shippuden is like another 400.
Jeez.
And there's so many filler arcs, but this was the first battle anime that I really got into where the powers were done uniquely. It wasn't just, I'm stronger than you. It was, how do I use what's special about me to tactically beat what's special about you? And I really appreciated that as someone who grew up on Dragon Ball Z and watched Goku just get stronger and then fire a big energy beam that was slightly bigger than his enemies and win.
Yes.
How dare you?
Yes.
Like I said, I love Dragon Ball Z. It's always got a spot in my heart. But Naruto changed the game for me. And even when I watched Bleach, which was around the same time, I was still getting that Dragon Ball Z feel. You know, Ichigo, he finds the inner strength and he manages to find a way to win. Naruto was just a little bit beyond that. It wasn't just the inner strength. You had to outsmart this guy who was the top of his class and come up with a plan, and using the fact that he underestimates you, and I have this trick and this trick, and there's a hole in the ground. And if I combine them together, maybe I can win this fight. And in Naruto, for the end battle of Naruto is one of the coolest fights ever. I think I've even sent the YouTube video to Jeremy like 2 or 3 times. Like, are you sure you've watched this? Are you sure you appreciated this as much as you should?
That was a really cool fight. I didn't have a clue who the characters were, but it was an awesome fight.
They take out the music. The art style even changes for this one battle. It's visceral. The entire series builds up to it, and I'm almost okay leaving Naruto at that point. I really like where Shippuden went, and Naruto Shippuden recently ended. The story is completed, and I like what they did with it. But it was like, oh, this is my finale. And so Naruto, even though it hurt me, and that's why it couldn't be on the list, it almost made it.
Nice.
Okay, guys, that's our first, what we're calling the prologue show. Now, this will not be the normal format of our show, like I mentioned. Now it's time to get everybody involved. And we also want to hear your answers to the questions we just went over. You can contact us on Twitter if you just want to do it quick. You can send us an email. So our Twitter is @Baka Podcast. So if you can answer one of these questions in 140 characters, go that route. We'll respond. We keep an eye on that. And our email is all one word, all lowercase, theanimebakaclub@gmail.com. And so if you want to give us a longer answer, we'd love to hear from you. Or if you're listening to the YouTube version of this, feel free to leave a comment there, and we will see it there. Now, in 2 weeks, we will meet again, film another episode, and we will be discussing My Hero Academia, or as it's known in Japan, Boku no Hero Academia. This is an anime about a boy who grew up wanting to be a superhero, which should be pretty easy since most of the planet has superpowers. Unfortunately, he's one of the 20% of the population that doesn't. And due to a fateful encounter with the greatest superhero on the planet and his greatest hero personally, his destiny is going to be changed. We'll be watching the very first 13 episodes. You can watch them in dub, you can watch them in sub. We will be definitely doing them in different formats. And we'll come together in 2 weeks. We'll discuss them. And, one thing about the show is we some of us have anime toys and stuff, but we're not really otakus. We're not super deep in anime. We can't tell you directors and writers. We're three normal guys who want to talk about these characters and these themes and these plots, and we want you to join us. Mm-hmm. So that we hope you enjoyed what you heard. We hope you enjoy what you'll hear in the future, and we hope you keep joining us. All right, guys, say goodbye.
See you later.
See you later.
Week. Goodbye.